Have you ever found yourself putting off the one project, the one thing you care about more than anything else? Well, today, we're going to dig into the psychology behind why we do that. And it turns out, the culprit is something you'd never expect, the desire to be perfect.
I mean, it's a question so many of us have asked ourselves, right? You've got this huge project, this amazing creative idea, this life change you know you need to make, and suddenly, your motivation just vanishes. It feels like we're just flawed, but the real answer is way more complex.
And get this, new research is starting to uncover this really deep psychological link between that drive to be perfect and the act of putting things off. So it turns out, this has nothing to do with being lazy, it's all about a hidden battle going on inside our own heads.
And this brings us to what researchers call the perfectionist paradox. It's this completely counterintuitive idea that having an intense desire to do something flawlessly can get so overwhelming that it actually leads to, well, not doing it at all.
Okay, so first things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page here. Procrastination is not just, taking a well-deserved break. The really key parts of this definition are voluntary and expecting to be worse off. You're actively choosing to delay, even when you know deep down it's going to come back to bite you.
See, right away, that tells us that this isn't some kind of time management problem. At its very core, it's an emotional problem. It's tied to this really intense fear of not measuring up. And that right there is exactly where perfectionism walks into the room. But to really get a handle on this paradox, we have to understand a crucial detail. Not all perfectionism is created equal. It actually has two very, very different faces.
So researchers make this really fascinating distinction. On one side, you've got what they call perfectionistic strivings. This is that internal drive, setting high standards for yourself, and that can actually be a really healthy motivator. But then there's perfectionistic concerns, and this one is driven by fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged, and this feeling that everyone around you expects you to be perfect.
And here's where the rubber meets the road. The research is crystal clear on this. People who are high in strivings, that internal drive, they tend to procrastinate less. Their high standards actually push them to get the work done. But people who are dominated by concerns procrastinate more. That fear of failure just becomes paralyzing. That's the real culprit here.
Okay, so how does this fear actually translate into hitting the brakes and not doing the work? Well, the mechanism that's at play here is something we can call the discrepancy trap.
The absolute key to this trap is a feeling the researchers call discrepancies. You know this feeling. It's that painful sinking in your gut, that sense that you're just not good enough, that the gap between where you are right now and that perfect outcome in your head is just, it's too big. You can't cross it.
And here's the chain reaction, step by step. It all starts with those perfectionistic concerns, that fear of judgment. That fear creates that awful, painful feeling of a discrepancy. And that feeling is so uncomfortable, so negative, that our brain just looks for the fastest escape route. And what's the quickest escape? Procrastination. You avoid the task just so you can avoid the feeling.
And what this all reveals is the real motive that's driving this entire process. Procrastination isn't actually about getting the task done later, it's about managing your mood right here, right now. As a couple of researchers put it so perfectly, we give in to feel good. In that moment when you decide to put something off, your goal isn't to finish the project anymore. The goal becomes repairing your bad mood. And procrastination is just the quickest tool to get some of that immediate emotional relief.
So really, we procrastinate to stop feeling bad. The task itself gets all tangled up with these feelings of anxiety and self-doubt and fear. So by pushing it away, we get a little vacation, a temporary break from all those negative emotions. This creates a kind of civil war inside our own heads, a battle between two different versions of ourselves. Your present self gets exactly what it wants, to feel better right now. But it's basically borrowing that happiness from your future self, the poor guy who gets left to deal with all the stress and the pressure and the original task, which now looks even bigger and scarier.
But that short-term relief isn't free. The bill always comes due. So what's the actual price our future self ends up paying for that little bit of comfort today?
Well, the research links chronic procrastination to a whole list of really negative outcomes. And we're not just talking about getting a bad grade on a project. We're talking about higher stress overall, serious links to anxiety and depression, and even putting off critical things for our health, like going to the doctor or eating well.
And here's the cruelest part of this whole paradox. The guilt and the stress that you feel from procrastinating yesterday,
that becomes the exact negative feeling that your present self wants to avoid today. It creates this downward spiral where the cure, avoiding the task, actually makes the disease even stronger.
So look, if you take one thing away from this whole explainer, let it be this. The battle against procrastination isn't won with a better calendar or a fancier to-do list app. It's won by learning to understand and manage the emotions that are driving us to delay in the first place.
And that leaves us with a final, much more powerful question we can ask ourselves. Instead of beating yourself up and asking, how do I stop being so lazy? Try asking with a little bit of curiosity. What is the feeling that this task is bringing up that I'm trying so hard to escape? Answering that question, that's the real first step out of the paradox.